So welcome everyone. Welcome to our meeting again, and welcome back, Dave. And thanks very much for coming and joining us and speaking again about what's been going on in the UK or some of the cases.
No problem at all.
I just want to introduce Dave again for people who are watching this on YouTube. Dave is the chairman and lead investigator for the Birmingham UFO Group and United Kingdom deputy representative for the International Coalition for Extraterrestrial Research. He regularly writes for UFO Truth Magazine. He's previously written for a number of other magazines. He's spoken at many well-known conferences and some upcoming too, he was just telling me before, and given educational classes on the UFO investigation. And he's appeared on television and radio numerous times, and he's actually designed a UFO-themed card game, which we were just having a chat about. And since 2008, Dave has directly investigated hundreds of sightings and contact experiences from around the world. And he believes that the evidence available points towards regular interaction between numerous advanced extraterrestrial intelligence and the human race. So welcome, Dave, and great to see you again.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be back.
Great. So do you want to screen share and I shall get out of this picture?
Okay, we're going to start. So my talk today is the best of BUFOG, and it's going to be about some of the better sighting reports and contact reports that my group has investigated over the last 14 years. So let's rock and roll. So welcome everybody to the best of BUFOG, the best of Birmingham UFO Group. This is a particular lecture that I've put together to highlight some of the most impressive cases that have come our way. As Cheryl mentioned, I've investigated literally hundreds of cases over the last 14 years, possibly over 1,000. I've lost count of the amount of sightings and the contact cases that I've dealt with. Obviously, there's no kind of point scoring in the UFO subject. It just is what it is, and I just constantly investigating cases, and I've always got numerous cases on the go that I write up regularly as detailed case reports. Now, all the cases we're going to go through this evening, you'll be able to find on the Birmingham UFO Group website. And in some of these cases, we're only going to be covering sort of small snippets of the cases, just particularly impressive experiences out of those cases, which are sometimes much bigger. And there's also going to be a bit towards the start on my group. So let's have a look. an impression of what my desk at home looks like. So we're going to start with a brief history of the group, so you can see a bit of background about where we came from. Then in the main first part, we're going to look at some of the most impressive UFO sighting cases that have come our way, just a small selection of those. In part two, we'll look at contact experiences, a particular area of expertise for me. And then there'll be some final thoughts at the end. And of course, I'm happy to take questions at the end of the talk as well. So first, a disclaimer for you all. Birmingham UFO Group does not guarantee that any of these cases represent encounters as extraterrestrial aerial vehicles or their occupants. However, the evidence available makes it pretty darn likely. And secondly, this lecture is unsuitable for debunkers, blind skeptics, academics, trouble scientific dogma, government agents, shallow thinkers, or individuals who wish to live in a bubble their entire lives. And I assume that that doesn't apply to any of you. So without further ado, let's continue. Let's get that out there. So the history of BUFOG, where did we come from? Well, Birmingham UFO Group was originally launched by these two chaps on the right, Craig and Mark. They live in Quinton, an area in the centre of Birmingham. And in late 2007, they essentially launched Birmingham UFO Group. And I came across the group online, and straight away I was really excited by the fact there was a local group that I could go to and attend and meet people with like-minded interests, just have a good chat. The initial meetings started off in a pub called the Amber Tavern up in Quinton. So the first few were there, and then later on we moved to a function room. I became an investigator for the group in early 2008. It wasn't long before Craig and Mark saw my passion for the subject and also my knowledge of it, and they offered me the chance to become the official investigator for the group. And this kind of was my driving force behind starting to actively investigate the subject. I could have done that much sooner. I could have been an investigator for years before that. But up until that point, I just had a big interest in the subject, as many other people do. It actually started with a case that came our way. And I'll be starting my talk, part one of the talk, with that case to show you the first case that I investigated. And it's quite a good one as well. I took on chairman responsibilities for Birmingham UFO Group in 2009. For Craig and Mark, it was just a kind of short-term thing, and they realised that I was the right person to continue driving the group forward. So they offered me the chance to take over the running of it, and from that point on, I was both the chairman and the lead investigator for the group. Since then, I've taken on a couple of other investigators who also assist with certain cases, but probably at least 90% of the cases are still investigated by myself. A lot of the time when people come to the group, they expect to want to be able to speak with me, and they'll share details with me in confidence because of word of mouth. But sometimes when we get a lot of cases in at once, I'll pass some of those on. In 2010, I started online contactee support sessions. There's not particularly many places around the UK doing this. There's more so in the States, and there's a number of different contact support groups in the States, but in the UK, it's few and far between. And I figured that rather than have direct meetings with people in Birmingham, I would do it online, because that meant that people could keep their anonymity, and also it didn't matter where they were from. So I set up this online chat room that some people talked into with microphone and some people just typed. It was completely anonymous, and it was essentially just a place for people, for experiencers to gather to talk about their experiences, ask questions, etc. Ran quite a few of those for a number of years, and at the moment that part of our website is actually down and everything, but I do intend to get that started up again. In actual fact, later this year, I've got early plans to do another direct live meeting in Birmingham, but yeah, I can't say anything more about that at this current second. So yeah, in 2011, we moved to our current venue at Oldbury. There's a photo of one of our meetings taking place. So it's a nice open function room, essentially. And we have meetings every first Thursday of the month now. and that most of those we've got speakers coming and talking, or I'll give a talk directly. In actual fact, I'm planning to give a talk on the 7th of April at the group, alongside a lifelong experiencer named John Judge, a lovely chap, and we're going to go through a lot of his experiences in depth. So that's a bit about BUFOG there. So let's move on to our first main section, Watch the Skies. Lovely image there. And yeah, let's talk about the very first case that I investigated, how it all began. So essentially, one of the initial meetings that I went down to, there were a few young chaps there at the meeting, and they'd actually very recently had a UFO sighting, which took place on the 10th of February, right back in 2008. In talking about this experience with them, I really wanted to go out to visit the location where it had taken place. I thought this is a great opportunity. We can go out to, because it was this area of woodland in Kings Winford, North Birmingham. And I thought it'd be really great to go and check out the site and just talk about what took place out there. And that was when Craig and Mark approached me and said, do you want to write this up as a case report? So I had that in my mind when I went out there, and I didn't tell the witnesses I was going to do this, but I essentially interviewed each of them individually and got them to do some drawings, which you'll see in a moment. So they'd often visit this location and just light up a bonfire. It was a nice clearing out in the woods, so just go out there and hang out around this fire. And on the evening of 10th of February, it's quite a cold evening, they'd headed to the usual clearing in the woods. There's an aerial shot there of the location, and the clearing is about the middle of those woods, but you can't really see it from the air because of the tree cover, but it's around there. And it got to 11:30 at night. It was yeah, as I say, it was a bit chilly, but it was a lovely clear evening. And one of the witnesses, also called Dave, he spotted these lights moving over Enville to the northwest, off to the left. It's Kings Winford's actually on a slope, so it has a nice view over those fields that you can see there on the map. And he saw these lights in the distance. Now, the lights were kind of a mix of white, blue and red. And essentially, at first, he thought that's got to be a distant aircraft, despite the fact you don't really get blue lights with aircraft usually. But these lights were kind of moving along at a slow speed. And he realized that they were coming towards them. They were coming towards the hill. And it seemed to be quite low down over the field. So it was actually almost looking down on it. It was about level with his vision. So this thing seemed quite low down, lower than a helicopter would usually fly at. As he got nearer, he kind of realized that it wasn't a plane, and he alerted the other witnesses to it. He said, come check this out, and they'll start watching this thing. And essentially what they described was this. It was a black octagonal shaped disc. It had about 30 feet across, they estimated, with a number of red and white lights in the base of the object. And it was completely silent, and it was just gliding towards them, essentially. This here is the 4 independent drawings that I got the different witnesses to do on the night when we went out to the woods. They had no clue that I was going to ask them to do this. And I'm sure you can see there the similarity between those drawings. So the first 2 almost identical to one another. The third one is actually drawn it from a side perspective, with it up in the air with the lights around the edge again. And down the bottom is meant to represent them around the bonfire and some of the trees. The fourth one, I don't know if you see that too clearly. It's essentially, he's drawn it kind of more of a diamond shape there, but again with the lights around the edge. Obviously with multiple witness corroboration, you often get small discrepancies between experiences when they talk about the details. Now, that doesn't just apply to UFOs, and that's in no way suspicious at all. So, for example, if the police asked 10 witnesses about a car crash has occurred that they happen to have seen, there will be minor discrepancies between their descriptions a lot of the time. So they couldn't agree exactly where the positioning of the lights or the colours, but it was pretty obvious that they'd seen the same thing. The details that came out were quite impressive. They followed this through the woods. It essentially came over the clearing, and it seemed to actually slow down for a moment over the clearing, they think, almost like it was just checking them out. And then it sped up again and kind of moved off across the woods. And they started running through the woods. One of them actually tripped over a branch in the woods and actually hurt his ankle. So there were a lot of little details, anecdotal details like that coming out, which led me to believe that it was real. This is one of the witnesses here, Christian, and he's pointing in the direction that the object headed off. That's Dudley. It's the lights of Dudley in the distance there. They watched this object kind of moved away into the distance, and it actually remained in the area for an extensive period of time. They think they were there for up to half an hour, although sometimes time can seem a lot slower when you're in the middle of watching something. Obviously, sometimes that may actually be the case because of time distortion. But what I mean by that is that sometimes it can be a lot shorter a sighting, but to them it felt drawn out. So they're all standing there and they're watching this thing, and in the distance it essentially just looked like a helicopter just moving around left and right, but they knew it was the object because they hadn't stopped watching it, they'd just seen it move away. So very interesting sighting. Yeah, and on the way home there, after a while, they just left it there in the sky, just still there in the distance. I mean, it's possible at some points that it accidentally, was a patrol helicopter, and maybe they, lost sight of it a moment, and then it came back, and they thought they were watching it. It's hard to say for sure, but if it was the object, still, it was there for quite a time. As two of the witnesses walked home, Dave and Christian, they actually spotted it again through the gaps in between the houses, which was quite spooky for them. The fact that this thing still seemed to be in the area. So yeah, I'm sure you'll agree that's quite an interesting multiple witness case there, and also unusual shaped object. And it was great to kind of be in the deep end with that. So I wrote up this detailed case report, and from that moment on, I was investigating cases that came into the group. So we're next going to look at an absolutely fascinating landing case that occurred in the centre of Birmingham. I investigate cases from anywhere, not just the Birmingham area, but obviously because of us being Birmingham UFO Group, many of the cases are from around the Midlands and around Birmingham. And this is such a case. Now, one of the witnesses of this experience actually came down some of the BUFOG meetings, and this is how I found out about what had happened. The incident, we believe, happened sometime between 1999 and 2003 in Erlington. Birmingham is just one of the districts of Birmingham, very, very urbanized area. And you're probably thinking, that's a big time gap there, 4 years, they can't get it down nearer than that. Why? There's a very valid reason for that, which we'll come to as we go through the details. So it involved two witnesses, one of which came down the group, and his friend who I only met through the investigation, and also their pet dog was there. And they lived on Holly Lane, and this is a view of across Holly Lane from near his house. And the area in the photograph there you can see is called they call it the tip. It was essentially just a rough grassland, fenced off, but they would sometimes go in there to walk the dog around and have sneaky cigarettes as well. So they're out there and they're standing roughly where you can see in the picture there, and they notice these three red lights in the distance in a triangular formation, and they're just kind of moving from right to left. And they're thinking, that looks a bit strange. There's no flashing strobes or anything on that, just three red lights. As it got nearer, it started to have this kind of wobble to it. Now, this is actually replicated by other cases I've investigated, and it's possible some kind of distortion from some sort of field around the object. So it was this kind of wobbling thing to it. It wasn't there when it got nearer, but in the distance, it looked strange to them. So as it got nearer, they realised that it was this black triangular-shaped craft. Had a kind of dark amber sort of light in the base at the corners, and no central light. In some cases, there's also a central light, but in this case, I mean, it could have been a central light. Maybe it was switched off at the time. Who knows? But either way, they could see these three lights, and this thing essentially just glided towards them. It came over that fence that you can see in the picture there, and literally came down and landed in the road in front of them. This is a representation of what it looked like to them when it was up close. You can see how close away that was, within a stone's throw from them. and it didn't actually touch the ground. It kind of hovered about a foot off the actual road surface, completely silent, and it just stopped there for a while. Now, while it was there, one of the witnesses, the one who used to come down our group, he could hear these noises. It was kind of this undulating sound, wong, 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 sort of low noise like that. And interestingly, when I spoke with the other witness, he didn't hear that at all. He just, it was completely silent for him. So they're standing there looking at this craft, and it's just in front of them. They're wondering what to do. And the dog's still there by their side. And after a minute, the dog sort of bolts and runs literally past the object and towards the house. Nothing happens, no doorway or anything opens, anything like that. There's the strange pulsing sounds I mentioned. And then it takes off, essentially. It again took off completely silently, and it drifted up until it was over the roof of one of the witnesses' houses, and it stops there again above the roof. Maybe coincidence, maybe not. And then after that, it kind of moved off away from them over these garden allotments. The top image there is I've tried to draw the this is the route it came in. This is where they were standing, and then it kind of moved off. That's the house there, and then it headed off. The lower picture there is the garden allotments, a photograph over the fence. So they ran up this side road to where they could see the garden allotments. You can see the top of a greenhouse sticking up there over the fence. When they got there, the object had completely vanished. Now I've dealt with so many cases where that's the case, where people lose sight of the object for a brief moment and then they go and check and it's gone. That happens far too regularly for it to be a coincidence. In actual fact, just last week I was talking with a gentleman who watched something for a period of minutes, and then for a few seconds he reaches down to grab his camera, and when he looks up, it's no longer there. And I think that sometimes they're aware that they're being observed and use that opportunity to leave the area. It's just a theory. So this is the thing. They have a vague recollection of leaving the fence and sort of walking back to their own homes, and that's it. Now, in the morning when they woke up, neither witness could remember the incident at all. And for a number of years, they actually didn't remember that it had taken place. Now, the dog seemed to remember, because the dog didn't want to go across near where the craft had come down, and would act agitated, and they didn't know why. Even that didn't trigger anything for them. They didn't have any recollection of the triangular object at all, which is absolutely fascinating. So complete memory block for both of them. Now, you're probably thinking, how on earth is he telling me the details if they didn't remember it? Well, the memory did return. Once one of the witnesses, Simon, he'd moved house. This is really interesting. So he lived on Holly Lane, and then when he moved away from the area to a new location, soon after he'd moved house, it came back to him, and it came back to him just like a memory of something that had happened previously. Like, let's say you think back to something that happened on a holiday a number of years before. It was like that. And he remembers this object coming down into the road, and he's like, why did I forget that? So he rings his friend, tells his friend, do you remember when we saw that triangular thing, that black triangular thing come in the road? And that triggered his friend's memory of it. And then his friend remembered it too. But up until that point, none of them remembered it. So the trigger seemed to be leaving the area. There was nothing else that seemed obvious that would have triggered that memory. Very, very interesting. And also, yeah, this is where we found the sound. Now, I talked about the sound with Simon. We actually tried to regress him. I worked with a regressive hypnotherapist, and I felt that maybe more had gone on with that, and it could have potentially been a contact experience. So we tried to regress him, but unfortunately he couldn't relax enough to be regressed. So that was kind of a dead end. I just spoke with his friend. I didn't get his friend regressed at all or anything like that. But the sound was familiar to him. This is really interesting. When he thought of that undulating noise that he'd heard, only him, by the way, he had this recollection of hearing it on a previous occasion, sometime around like age 10 or 11, and being in his bedroom and hearing the same sound. And there's a possibility there that he was an experiencer, a contactee, and that he'd had, maybe abduction type experiences involving this craft before. And maybe if that was the case, that craft was there for him, and his friend just happened to be around at the time and was a kind of secondary independent witness. And then if you think about it like that, then maybe that explains why only he heard the noises, not his friend. It's just a theory. So I'm next going to take you through another fascinating incident involving this black spherical object that was seen. And one of the witnesses of this was my friend Chris. And I was kind of almost part of this experience as well. Not quite. So it took place on the 6th of October in 2012, a place called the Bradleys, which is in Sheldon, an area in South Birmingham. And my friend Chris, he was on his way over on a bus, coincidentally coming across my house on a bus, and he looked out the left window of the bus, and what he saw, this is from the location where he saw it, that's a mock-up, that's not a photograph that he took at the time, but what he saw, he first saw this helicopter look like a standard police helicopter, sort of doing a patrol, and then he noticed this small black object, this round black object. At first he thought it was a camera or something hanging underneath the helicopter, but as the bus moved down the road, he realized it wasn't attached to the helicopter, and the helicopter seemed to be checking it out. It was just right there next to it, hovering. Now, even though Chris has got interest in UFOs, he didn't take a photograph of it, and he didn't get off the bus. Like he could have easily stood up, got off at the next stop to continue watching it, and he didn't. And afterwards, he thought back and he was like, why didn't I do that? Yeah. So you get this with a lot of sightings, as I'm sure you're aware. You get people act in unusual ways, and a lot of the time act far too complacent to what's taking place. And this may be the reason why, even when people have got cameras on them, there's no photographic evidence. So, you know, he had every opportunity to take a snap of it, and he didn't. And then afterwards wondered why. But he rang me from the bus and said, I've just seen something unusual. So as soon as he arrived at my house 5 minutes later, and I'm like, we've got to get back out there, maybe it's still there. So we drove back to the location, which took about sort of 7 minutes from my house. When we got up there, unfortunately, the object had vanished, but the helicopter was still present in the area. And by this time, the sun had also started to go down. In actual fact, this photograph is a mock-up. It was sort of more like sunset at this point. While we were out there, we noticed that there were no other aircraft in the area. Now, it's quite close to Birmingham International Airport, so you expect to see planes taking off or landing. And my friend Chris, he's an aviation expert, and he was saying there's no planes in the air. What's going on here? We should be seeing aircraft coming in. So that was an interesting observation there. On the right there, you can see the photograph I took. That's the roundabout of the Bradleys. And in the distance off to the left is where the bus, where Chris had his sighting. That's the helicopter. It was still in the area, and to all intents and purposes, it just looked like it was doing a normal sort of police patrol. So, in the morning, I decided to ring the airport. I got the details down, and I actually put out a case report on this one very, very fast, because I thought maybe there were other witnesses to this thing, and I wanted to see if any other witnesses came forward. So in the first thing in the morning, I ring up Birmingham International Airport. I spoke with the lady there, and she confirmed to me that a police helicopter had been sent out to investigate something. She also confirmed to me that the flights had been cancelled that evening. Now, she put the flight cancellation down to bad weather, down to foggy weather. But here's the thing: we checked the weather, and there wasn't any fog, and it seemed far too much of a reaction to ground a number of aircraft and put hundreds and hundreds of people in hotels overnight for possible fog that never materialised. Now, she claimed that the object that the police helicopter had gone out to investigate was a kite, as she called it. Well, there's a lot of things that don't really fit with that. I mean, kites usually aren't sort of black or spherical in shape. And if it was a kite, surely the police would have found who was flying said kite from the ground, gone up to them and basically said, can you not do that, please? You're in a fly zone, and they would have stopped it. But that didn't seem to happen. So there's a lot there that didn't really fit. And we did actually have other witnesses come forward, which was absolutely great. I spoke with one of those witnesses. There was two witnesses came forward. The first one contacted me about 2 days later, and he claimed to have been outside the shops that are around this island. He said that the object was there for about 50 minutes. and he said he stared at it for a good period of time. It was completely stationary, and the helicopter was essentially moving around it for that period of time. After a good while, he decided to leave and go into a shop. And when he came back out again, about a minute later, the object wasn't there anymore. So when it left the area, it had left pretty fast. Now, we did also get a second witness come forward who provided a statement. Now, this second witness claimed to have seen the object depart, and he said that it had shot away like a bullet into the distance. Unfortunately, when I tried to contact that witness, he didn't respond to my emails. So it's possible that he just wanted to provide that statement, but obviously there was no verification with that. It just was what it was. So an amazing case there. It's really interesting. And yeah, I was almost part of that one. It was a shame that the object wasn't there in the sky when we got back up, because I could have been a witness to that myself. But yeah, certainly very interesting aspects to that case. The next thing I'm going to talk about a potential UFO crash, and this is one that isn't on record anywhere outside of my group. This is a relatively new report. It came into me last year. And after talking with the key witness in great detail about it, I've got no doubt at all that it was a genuine crash of a craft. But I'll take you through the details now. So it involved this chap named Hodrien Johns, who's a farmer from down Devon in the south of the UK. And it back in 1975. There was a farmer's crash. Essentially, the stock market sort of fell, and the farmers were in severe trouble. And he was looking around in Farmers Weekly magazine, and he came across an advert asking for a cattle farmer to move out and work on a ranch in Venezuela. And he decided, because of the money situation, and he didn't have many ties at the time. So he decided to go for it. He decided to accept that job. And in 1976, September 1976, he moved out to this cattle ranch in Venezuela. He stayed there for about sort of 20 or so years. This is an aerial shot of the ranch. In 1996, he'd become the ranch administrator at a place named Corralito. This is an aerial shot of Corralito Ranch. And as you can see, you've got large areas of open grassland, and then these areas of dense jungle trees. That's his official identification there to prove he is who he said he was. That's his Venezuelan ID there. And he also provided numerous other photos. This here is a shot that he took from the air of the ranch. That there on the right, that's an aerial map of the HQ of the ranch. It's just a number of buildings where they would generally stay in the center of the ranch. And the incident actually took place over the Christmas period in 1996. Now, a lot of the staff on the ranch had gone home for the Christmas holidays, but there was a few people remained. Hodrien as the ranch administrator, his two stepbrothers were there, and also a number of other cowboys remained to look after the livestock over the period. And each evening he would drive to the northwest corner of the ranch to lock the main gate. Now, he said it was quite a dangerous area to work with. There was a number of kidnappings and things had gone on in the area, so they had to make sure it was very secure each evening. So they'd make this drive, and the ranch is quite a sizable area of land, as you'll see in a moment. And essentially, it took about half an hour to drive out to this gate. There was a guard at the gate who the guard didn't lock up himself. That was Hodrien's job, but there'd be somebody there on watch. So on the night, he decided to take along with him both his stepbrothers and also three other cowboys. They decided to go along, and they all headed up there in the pickup truck, because there wasn't many people around. There wasn't that much else going on at the HQ at the time. This is the route that they took through the ranch. Down at the bottom right of the map, you can see Corralito marked there. That's where the HQ is. And this curve, about a third of the way up, that's the airstrip. There was an airstrip where they'd have planes and come in regularly to land. Off to the left, you've got this dense area of jungle that's covering low hills. And then at the end of the arrow there, that's where the gate to the ranch was. So it's quite a sizable area. So they drove up there to the ranch, past the airstrip, stayed with the gate guard for about sort of half an hour, just had a quick coffee with him, a little chat, and then they made their return down to the HQ. So by the time they reached the top of the airfield, it was about sort of 7:20 in the evening. So they were just coming down to that bit where you can see the sort of backward C curve there. And this is where the incident took place. So what happens, they're driving down towards the HQ, and in it comes from the left of their vision, this object. It was very low down. He thinks it was about 50 feet off the ground. Now, obviously they owned an airstrip, so they were very familiar with how aircraft look at different distances and different times of day. So I felt that his testimonial was quite trustworthy due to that fact. So yeah, he said it was very, very low down. And essentially what it was this, a glowing yellow cigar or cylindrical shaped object, had at least one porthole in it. You could see a central one. He thinks maybe the glare coming from the object kind of masked other portholes that, or windows maybe, that would have been there, but he could definitely see one in the center, which is why he's drawn it. So he was of the impression there were probably others. And this thing's moving very, very slowly. He thinks it was moving under 20 miles an hour, which is too slow for a commercial aircraft to fly at. There was no wings or tail visible. The sun, by the way, was not setting, so this almost certainly was not reflection of evening sun on the object, kind of masking its appearance. As I said, they were very familiar with that, and he said absolutely not. He said the sun wasn't anywhere low enough in the sky for that to be the case here. It definitely was that shape. It was completely silent. Now this was about 100 yards ahead of them, so you think they would certainly have heard engine noises if there was. But this thing was silent, and it was just moving across like this from their left to their right. And they get out they stopped the pickup truck, and they got out to watch this thing. As I say, very, very slow travel speed. As it moves across in front of them, kind of above the airstrip, all of a sudden it bursts into flame. And it doesn't react to this. It continues moving the same distance, the same direction, but now it's got flames billowing across its surface. And you can see there on the drawing, he's drawn the porthole there, and you could still see through it. So absolutely fascinating. There was no sound when it did this. It just erupted in a flame and continued moving on a straight path. And it started to kind of move off towards the west, which towards the boundary of the ranch. Now there's some low hills there, and he thinks that maybe as it moved away, it may have sort of ascended to go with the lay of the land, because otherwise, if it kept going straight, it probably would have kind of crashed into the ground at some point, but it didn't. So as it moves off, there's the low hills he's drawn there in the painting he's done. Quite nice paintings he's done for this one. All of a sudden, the object broke apart into pieces. There was 3 main chunks and a few smaller bits, and they rained down into the trees below. Now down there at the ground is a very, very dense jungle, and it just basically rained down, still on fire. There was no sound of any explosion, just broke up and just went down. He said that the pieces seemed to fall kind of unnaturally slow as well, which was interesting. He said that he expected the bits to go down due to the distance. He could kind of tell roughly where it was. It was over an area called La Marta off to the west, which is where the boundary was, and it fell down into the trees. Now, unfortunately, the trees were too dense overgrowth to kind of head out there. There was no roads in that area that they could kind of drive to and just see it there lying on the ground or anything. It was just dense jungle. He did get a chance to later on go out to the location because they have sort of different seasons. So they have a kind of monsoon type season, very wet, and then it'll dry out. And about March time, it actually dried out enough for him to travel out there one day. And he went out there and unfortunately couldn't find anything. But he said that there may have been things there. It's just the amount of overgrowth that had happened over the months. There was deep vine growth, so he said that the vines could have grown over these pieces of the object, and it may still be there to this day out in the trees. Now there was actually other witnesses that we think were linked with this case. which is very, very interesting indeed. So they get back to the ranch HQ and they're talking about this, obviously, for hours about what they'd seen. Absolutely fascinated. They were truly convinced it was something out of the ordinary. So the following day, they had the radio on at the HQ, and all of a sudden, there's this report on the radio. And what it reported was that an aircraft had to make an emergency detour and land at San Fernando. And San Fernando is position B on the map there on the left. So it's kind of southeast of Corralito, sort of a large town in the area. And the pilots of the plane had witnessed a glowing object fly quite close to their aircraft, traveling northwards. And it had gone past the plane. And it kind of spooked them out so much that they decided to make an emergency landing at San Fernando. So this was very, very interesting. You know, and they were reporting it from the day before. So on the same day, they reported seeing this glowing object traveling north. What are the odds? In early January, sort of 6th of January, the other staff from the ranch started to return from their Christmas break. Some of them lived in a village called, let's see if I say this right, Gardatin-Jajas. It's quite a difficult name there to say. And this is a small village off to the east of the ranch. There's all sorts of like little villages dotted around here and there. Now, the staff reported that they'd seen a glowing object come in from the south, come across the village, perform a right angle turn over their heads and head off to the west. What do you know? Corralito Ranch happened to be to the west of the village. So seemingly we've got other witnesses there, again, of this glowing object. Now, obviously, there are 3 different experiences. You know, there was no way to say 100% conclusively it was the same thing, but it seemed logical. And let's say it was. What we believe we've got is a track of where this object had flown. So position A there on the map is San Fernando. It's where the pilots, we don't know where exactly the plane was in the area. It was that rough location around the town. So heading north, you've got position B, that's the village there, performs the right angle turn, heads off westwards towards Corralito at position C. So it seems logical that it was the same object and we traced where it come from. Which is absolutely fantastic. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't able to talk with any of the other witnesses. We've only got one key witness at the moment, Adrian. I tried to talk to his stepbrothers. One of his stepbrothers sadly passed away. The other one, we tried contacting via email, but he didn't seem interested in providing any statements. That's probably because of the stigma of the subject. He just wanted to get on with his life. It had happened and probably didn't want to go down on the record as being part of it. The other cowboys and everything that were there, he's long since sort of lost touch with because he now lives back in the UK. He moved back to the UK a number of years after this experience. But yeah, I'm sure you'll agree there, an absolutely fascinating incident, and it has all the hallmarks of a genuine UFO crash. It's the only time I've ever investigated a case involving a potential crash of an object. And I think that the testimonial backing this up is very, very strong. I hope in due course other witnesses come forward to this fascinating incident. And it does make you wonder whether it's right out there right now, lost in the jungle trees somewhere in the area, are pieces of this object lying there. Who knows? So the last case I'm going to go over with you is another one that came in quite recently. It's another historical case, and it involves military. And it's a very important case for that particular reason. Now, I've dealt with a number of military cases before over the years, but none to this sort of level, shall we say. So it was early last year. I was contacted by a gentleman who was an ex-aircraft mechanic who used to work as part of the Greek Air Force. Now, for various reasons, I can't disclose his name. I can't disclose the exact location where this took place because it's still confidential. So it's a classified UFO encounter. It happened at a large East Coast base in Greece in July 1989. And it took a while to gain the trust of the gentleman. for him to come forward with the information. He was quite scared at first that I was going to splash out his name and details all over the internet. He did provide various photographs to prove his background to me. These are photographs of him actually on the base. He sent them to me unedited, and we've sent on purpose censored out his face. He also sent me photographs of his Greek uniform, which he told me was for me only, just to prove his background, and I wasn't allowed to share those with the report. But there's 2 photographs of him at the base. So certainly is who he says he is. That's the official badge of the Greek Air Force there. As part of this, he worked as part of a 12-person squadron. So it was him and 3 other aircraft mechanics. There was 4 pilots and 4 weapons experts, essentially making up the squadron. And he would perform aircraft checks, essentially, to ensure that the jets were in working order. At the time of the incident, he was stationed at the western end of the airstrip. There was a building there where, of course, squadrons could kind of hang out in. There wasn't much furnishings. They just said it was just a few sofas and tables and things, so quite sparse. And he was there on night duty that night. At the time, they were essentially prepping for training exercises where they'd send in friendly jets, and they had to pretend that there were kind of enemies attacking the base, and had to be ready to kind of launch jets off the runway to intercept, essentially. So yeah, as I say, nighttime training exercise. And it got to sort of 12:40 in the morning, and he did a changeover with one of the other mechanics. So each mechanic would take a number of hours where they would check over the aircraft, and then they would change hands, essentially. And it got to the end of his shift. So he handed over to another mechanic in the building. And at that point, he decided to step outside for a short while to stretch his legs. It was quite a clear night, so stars were out, lovely, beautiful weather that night, very clear sky. Looking to the east along the runway, he spotted something. He spotted some red lights in a triangular formation. So it's very, very similar here to how the object looked at Erdington when it was in the distance. And it was hovering over the center of the airbase, essentially over the airstrip, main runway. This is a drawing he's done of it. He said that the main body of the object wasn't particularly visible, but they were absolutely convinced that it was one solid object, not 3 smaller objects in formation. So that's what he's drawn there. It was 500 meters away from them, and it was hovering not particularly high up, 300 to 500 meters off the ground, he estimates. Of course, as an aircraft mechanic, again, his testimonial very valued. I'm sure he'd be able to accurately sort of tell how far away it was and how high it was off the ground. So he called out his squadron to come and check this out. He's like, look at these, what's going on here? These strange lights, what is that? And they're all there. They don't start walking down the airstrip. It's quite big. The base is very sizable, but they watch it from their position. And it stays there, and it hovers there motionless in the sky for 10 minutes. Now, he's drawn it here, how it would have looked if you were directly underneath it. Yeah, they were looking at it at more of a side angle, but there was obviously kind of three lights there. So yeah, it would have been kind of closer up, of course. And it hovered there without moving for about 10 minutes. All of a sudden, bang, away it goes. The thing shoots off to the east like a bullet, just instant acceleration, massive speed. And it went in about 2 seconds. He said it was on the horizon. They all watched it go. Obviously, that extreme maneuver, they were like, wow, what are we dealing with here? What is this thing? They expected at that point that the alarms would go off, because obviously they thought, well, this thing must have been picked up by radar on the base. And it's obviously kind of close enough to our aircraft and everything. So he expected for it to be intercepted. So they thought the alarms are going to go off, they're going to get us to launch the jets and go after this thing. Nothing. There's absolutely nothing happens. So they go back inside the building and essentially do the rest of their shift for the rest of the night. There's no further incident. So it gets about 6 in the morning, and it's time for the end of their night shift. And at this point, they all go back to their barracks and drop off to sleep for a number of hours. The following day, after they've all woken up and everything, they get called to their commanding officer's office, essentially. He wanted to speak with the witness and the rest of his squadron. So they go along there, and it quickly became apparent that they knew that they'd seen something over the base the night before. Now, interestingly, what they said it had been is that they were doing a test of something similar to a Boeing E-3 Sentry. And this is an AWACS aircraft. There's a photo of one there. Now, obviously, what they'd seen was nothing of the kind. These aircraft cannot hover stationary, cannot hover silently, and certainly cannot suddenly shoot away at thousands of miles an hour. It's so it's absolutely obvious to him and the rest of his squadron that this was a cover-up, and it wasn't that at all. But that's what they were told that it was. They were also told that it was classified, and they weren't allowed to discuss it with anybody, including their own families or other people on the base. So very, very confidential incident that they clearly wanted to keep covered up at the time. It's only since leaving the Air Force that he's decided to come forward with this information. For many years, he remained with the Air Force and didn't discuss it with anybody. And he trusted me in confidence to put out the details of this case and get it publicly known. So an absolutely incredible incident. He also found out later on that they had detected it. He knew people in the radar area of the base, and they had got something on radar as well, but he wasn't able to get kind of details of that specifically. He just kind of heard in passing conversation. So yeah, very interesting case there. Obviously, if he'd gone fully public and everything, people would be able to kind of ask him and be able to get more details and release the exact location. I'm aware of where it took place, but I wasn't allowed to reveal that. But I'm sure you'll agree, an incredible incident there. And it's also you can see the similarities there between the other cases, especially with the Erdington case in terms of how it looked. It was essentially looked pretty much identical to what they've seen there. So let's move on to part 2 of our talk now. So we've talked there about some amazing UFO sightings that have occurred. And in the second section, I wanted to take you through some of the impressive contact cases that have come my way over the years. Now, I've always been fascinated by that particular angle of the subject. I think it gives us a kind of window into what's happening here with these beings, because it seems unlikely to me that they'd just be kind of randomly flying around our skies without doing anything. And I think that the abduction phenomena, the contact phenomena, gives us a view into that. And I'm going to start here with an absolutely incredible case from Droitwich. It's a case that I investigated right back in early 2011, and it involved many experiences. It's a repeat contact case. So the witness involved, she'd had experiences going right back to her childhood, but she hadn't really entertained those. She'd kind of pushed them to the back of her mind. So these 2 incidents that happened near early December 2010, they essentially triggered her to start looking into these previous experiences, and she realized that this had been going on most of her life. But what I'm going to take you through is these key 2 experiences. The family lived in a kind of rural house on the outskirts of Droitwich, no longer there. She's actually moved out of the country now entirely. But this took place around 1 in the morning. And the lady, whose name is Jenny, I'm allowed to reveal her name because she actually spoke at a couple of conferences about her experiences very bravely before sort of moving. But she went to check on one of her daughters. It was about 1 in the morning. She couldn't really sleep. She was just lying there. Her husband had dropped off to sleep. So she decides to go through to her daughter's bedroom, just to have a look, as mothers do. And she looked out, having a look out of the window, and in the distance, she saw an object, a glowing object over the trees in the distance. There's a small photograph there out of the window of the view over the field, and the oval is the position where this was. She turns around to check on her daughter again a second, and when she looks back, the object has jumped, and it's no longer in the distance. It's now down about 100 yards away from the house, and it's down much lower, kind of around where you can see that tree trunk there in the field, sort of a bit nearer than that. So it's pretty close to the house now, and it looked like this bank of very brightly glowing lights. She couldn't really see the shape of the object behind it. It was just these bright lights. Now, what would you do in that situation? I mean, you would almost certainly wake up your family and show them it. You might be terrified. You might ring up the police. You might even run out of the house. But she doesn't do any of those things. All she does is accept it and goes back to bed like it's an everyday thing. And so this is a classic case of where people's kind of mind, where they'll act very, very complacent towards what's going on. So she gets back into bed and she's there for a period of time. She doesn't know how long. She doesn't think it was particularly long, but all of a sudden she feels that she's no longer in her room. She's in a darkened area. She can't really see anything around her. She's lying down, but she looks to her right and her daughter's there. Her oldest daughter is there, sort of kneeling down next to her. And she leans into her and says, "Don't worry, Mum, they're not going to hurt you. It's your turn next." And she's puzzled by this. And she feels this rushing sensation. And all of a sudden, she's no longer in this darkened area. She's somewhere else. It's still very dark. It's just dark all around. And there's this glowing yellow grid lines, almost like laser lines, all around her in squares. And this is really interesting aspect to this case, and I haven't yet come across any other cases where that exact thing's been reported. So she feels that she's floating, lying down, and as she thinks she's floating, she's almost entirely paralyzed. She can move her head a little bit like this, but only a little bit, and her from neck downwards can't move at all. So she's just looking up all these lines all around her, and she's unclothed. She's then subjected to this examination. She feels that there's these small figures around her, either side of her, and she starts to feel them kind of touching her body, like touching the sides of her body, kind of going down her like this. And she actually had a bad back at the time, and she was scared that they were going to move her in such a way that it kind of triggered her back. And in response to this, she heard a voice in her head, a telepathic voice, tell her, "Don't worry, we're not going to hurt your back." She also sensed there was another figure, a taller figure. Now, she couldn't see it because she was almost paralyzed, but she sensed it was there behind her left shoulder, taller being, but unfortunately never got a look at it. At one point in the experience, she became kind of quite frightened by what was taking place. Of course, panic starts to set in. And this taller figure, she feels its hand come down over her head, and this kind of wave of calm flow through her body. So immediately kind of settles her back down again. All of a sudden, there's this doorway opens in the distance off to the left of her. It's a sort of white rectangular doorway with this light flooding in into this darkened area there where she is. And standing in the doorway, she can see her son. She wonders why her son's there. Now, I met her son when I went round to investigate the case, and her son's quite a tall chap. He's sort of at least 6.5 foot high, so pretty tall. Lovely guy. And he was there on the craft, and not on the craft, in this location. And she was wondering, "What are you doing here? Why are you in this strange place?" And it was really odd. He didn't speak with her at all. He just stood there. Now, when we after this experience, we took a regression hypnotherapist around to her house, and he regressed her right there at the house. Now, a lot of her memories of the incident were already present in her mind. She was able to go through a lot of the details with us. So it wasn't like this was a memory that just came out from the regression. She knew all this already, could remember it clearly. But when we got to the part with her son, it wasn't her son. She described a very tall, thin, skeletal-like figure with dark teardrop-shaped eyes. It was kind of at least 8 foot in height, and it seemed likely to me that this was a screen memory. And this is where I talked about this with your group last time I spoke, and this is where the beings will change their appearance into something, often something familiar to the person, like a family member, for example. And it seems that this is what happened. And maybe it's because of the height of the being. So they'd sort of superimposed their son's, whatever your views are on screen memories, it seems that this may have taken place. So that was essentially the end of the first experience. She felt that there was a sense of rushing going on, and she could hear chatter going on, but she couldn't hear actual voices. It was just kind of, she felt that the beings were communicating with one another, and it was kind of rushed, almost like she'd been there too long and she had to be back. And the experience ends. She comes around, she finds herself in her own bed, sits up. She's like, "What on earth just happened?" didn't feel anything like a nightmare or anything. It felt very, very visually real to her. And she wakes her husband up. She's like, something's really strange has just happened. Well, her husband was like, I just had a bad dream, go back to sleep. So she drops off. But in the days following it, she started to kind of panic, wanted to sleep in the room. She didn't like the idea of going to sleep in the bedroom because she knew that this incident had occurred. And her husband at the time, he didn't really believe that she'd had kind of anything happen. He didn't really kind of attribute it at all to contact or anything like that. But what he did was he worked as a camera maker. He would actually put together these night vision cameras. That was his job. And he had a bunch of them dotted around the house. So, so he said to her, he said, don't worry, we'll set up a camera, and every night when we go to sleep, we'll put the camera, it'll run, and nothing will come and get you if there's a camera watching you. Kind of just to put her mind at ease. And sure enough, that did sort of put her mind at ease, and she was able to get off to sleep. So in the morning, they would just essentially just wipe the footage, and then the following night they'd set it up and off it'd go again. Well, a few days after the set up the camera and it's rolling, she gets another experience. Very, very different experience. In this one, she suddenly finds herself in this completely different location. It reminded her of a doctor's office. There were these big kind of wood panels all over the walls. She's lying down this time. Well, I say this time. This time she's on some sort of flattened metallic bench-like structure. She's unclothed, but she's got a thin white sheet draped over her body up to the neck. And off to the right of her is a little chap. This is the drawings she did for this. In the middle of the picture, you can see it's a pair of double doors that kind of led out the room. The question mark at the top right, she sensed that the same being from her previous experience was there again behind her. So it's that's her lying down there. And this little guy is off to her right-hand side. He looked like a doctor. He was wearing sort of white doctor's clothing. He had spectacles. He had short red hair. Very strange little guy, about sort of 4 foot in height, but essentially looked largely human. So as I said, there was this presence of this other being. And he performed some kind of body scan on her. So he kind of moved his hands down over her and started moving his hands across her body, not touching her, just hovering a couple of inches above her. And he started to tell her ailments, either ailments that she currently had or ones that she previously had. So, for example, moved down over her stomach and said, oh, you used to have a stomach ulcer there, but it's healed up now. And this was telepathic. Again, it was coming through to her mind. So his mouth wasn't moving when he was telling her things like this. And after that experience, after he'd done this kind of strange body scan, again, bang, experience ends and she's back in bed. And she knew something had taken place again. She knew this wasn't right, and it was just very vivid to her. And even though it's quite different to the previous experience, she sensed that it was related. Obviously, the same sort of being was there again over her shoulder. And she wakes up her husband. Husband's like, you're worrying too much about it. So in the morning, they've got the camera footage, haven't they? The camera's been rolling the whole night. So they decide. Also when she woke up, she also found some markings around her abdomen area, some small bruises that she was pretty certain weren't there the night before. And strangely, in the days following it, she also felt that she was pregnant, and she didn't know why. She went to her local GP, and the GP confirmed to her that she wasn't pregnant. And soon after that, the feelings of that kind of seemed to go away. But in the morning, as I said, I had this video camera rolling. So what do? We've had an experience. You're going to check the footage, of course. So they start watching through this footage. And what are the odds that something unusual happens in that footage? Right, what I'm going to show you now is, I'll show you the footage that they've captured. As you can see, it's 3:33 a.m. Maybe coincidental, maybe not. There's a lot of numeracy goes on with contact cases, so that might be a thing. But either way, what you're looking at, it looks quite low quality, I know. This is it's second-hand footage, so it's on a monitor. They couldn't work out how to extract the raw file out of the security camera because you weren't meant to extract the actual video from it. We tried with various pieces of software to get the raw footage out. we couldn't. So what this is they've put it on a monitor and then filmed with a video camera the footage. Okay, so you're kind of looking at, so the quality of it's reduced a bit like that. You'll see it in better quality when it starts moving. This is their bedroom here. I checked out the location where this had happened, by the way, and I'm absolutely certain that it was a completely normal bedroom and bed. I'm also completely and utterly sure that this was not an intentional hoax. Off to the left in that dark area, her husband's lying there. You may notice him in some of the footage. This white is her lying underneath the sheets. I'm going to start the video now and take you through what's happening with it. So you can see it's 3:33 in the morning. There's no sound, by the way, to the video. That is a light over the center of the bed. Is a small light that's just switched off. There's a slight reflection coming off that, by the way. And it's kind of got this arced diagonal roof of the room, which you can just about make out there. So obviously we're analysing this in great detail. And she starts to do this, yeah. So you can see that she's kind of moving into this position. It looks like her back's almost kind of arcing up right off the bed, which is really odd. I mean, it just seems odd that you would even move into that position asleep at all. And there she goes. So all of a sudden, as you can see there, the bed has just folded right in to ridiculously flat, and you can still see her husband there, but the area where she was no longer there. Just looks to all intents and purposes like she's vanished from the bed. Now you can see the clock speeding up here. This is where they fast forward it. So there's no movement at all. As you can see, they're fast forwarding here to a position where they knew that something else took place. So it's now 3:46. So yeah, it's been about 13 minutes. And this is where she will essentially come back. The wobble's off there because of the video camera, obviously. So yeah, we analysed this in great depth and found no kind of movement at all down the base of the bed. There's a tiny bit of movement about a second after it drops, but we couldn't work out whether that was anything at all or whether it was just the kind of bedclothes folding in. Unfortunately, the footage is too low quality to kind of confirm that either way. There she goes. So the bed sheets go right up like that, and then there she is again. And you can see at this point her husband, sort of semi-disturbed from sleep, rolls over. And there she is. Now, it's a very interesting piece of footage, I'm sure you'll agree. We can't confirm 100% whether it is what it is. It's one of two things. She's either still there or she's not. Now, as she's still there, it means that she's moved into an odd position where it looks like she's suddenly kind of disappeared from the bed, like an optical illusion. Right? Here's the thing. That footage was actually sent to an American company. They make a series called Fact or Fate, where they try to prove or disprove paranormal videos. And they couldn't recreate the video footage themselves without convincingly without the use of special effects. So very, very interesting. Since then, the widely known skeptic Mick West, who's done a lot of research into various bits of footage, he has managed to create a piece of footage which looks somewhat similar. It's pretty good, but the lady was quite it's quite a big lady, and it seems unlikely that she would have been able to move into any position where it would have looked like that. The length of time that she vanishes for seems to correspond roughly with the experience time. So it wasn't like the experience went on for hours and hours, nor was it an experience that lasted for a few seconds and then was over. So that seemed to kind of correspond. The other thing is that, as I said, she had a bad back at the time, and she said if she'd moved around in the bed and everything significantly, it would have set her back off. And she would have sort of jumped up with a start, which clearly didn't happen. And essentially, there's lots of aspects of the experience itself which fit with it being a genuine abduction, including the little doctor guy. Because again, when we regressed her, she actually started to see past that and see that being in its true form. And I believe it was almost certainly a screen memory again. And when she was asked to describe the face of the short chap, she actually said, "It's like a mask. It's like it wants to fall off." That was the actual wording she used. So it was kind of like her brain was seeing past that it wasn't its real face. Very, very interesting indeed. So yeah, it's not often that you get a contact case which has video footage as part of it, but with this we do. And as I believe that the abduction took place and it is a real contact experience, I have to entertain the notion that that's an actual video of her being abducted on camera. So let's look into another case here. This is one came away a few years ago, and it involves a chap from Glasgow, sort of middle-aged chap now, and he's had experiences throughout his life. And one of his earliest big experiences took place in 1971. It's a dual abduction of both him and his brother from outside their own house on the 25th of November. You're probably thinking, wow, they've got the exact date when this happened, right back in 1971. Now, the reason for that is that he actually kept a diary of strange experiences that were going on in his life. So he'd done half my work for me. When I started talking with him about his experiences, he said, oh, I've captured a load. And he hadn't written down his later experiences, but a lot of his early ones, he'd actually written down massive passages of text about what had taken place, and even done some drawings. So that was really great, just getting that from him directly. On the night, his parents had gone out, they'd essentially gone out for the night to a show, and left his cousin babysitting him and his brother. And there was a program on that he wanted to watch, The Untouchables, a kind of gangster drama program, and he was looking forward to seeing that. Unfortunately, it was delayed on TV by a bit, and it was going past his bedtime, and his cousin was like, no, you've got to go up to bed. So he's kind of arguing about staying up a bit late just to watch this show. And all of a sudden, the whole room is flooded with white light coming in from outside. It's coming in through the open window. His cousin's really freaked out by this and basically says to them, do not go to the window, don't look. But he's very, very interested in it. Cousin actually tries to stop him, but he runs to the window, looks outside. Outside on the road, you can see this round passage of round kind of circle of light on the road, moving slowly along the road, and it goes up the wall of one of the houses opposite. Yeah. He then runs past his brother. He wants a better look at this. He's fascinated by what's going on. He runs past his brother, literally opens the front door of the house, runs down to the bottom of the garden, and he's standing there looking around, wondering where this light's come from. There's glowing light all around. Incidentally, there's nobody else has come out of their house. It's just him, which is interesting. Possible kind of a shutdown of other people in the area. But he runs outside, and looking across to the right, he sees this a few houses down, sees this white disc hovering in the back garden over the roof of one of the houses. You'll see his drawing here. This is his original drawing. This isn't a drawing I asked him to do for the case. This is a drawing that he'd done himself many years ago. That there in the distance is the house, and you can see it looks almost like a cake with a slice cut out because of the roof of the house, sort of blocking part of the view of the disc. But what's going on here? So he was joined by his brother, and they're looking at each other, all the colors drained out of their clothing, like, wow, what is this? It's absolutely wild. And all of a sudden, he realizes they're not alone. He realizes there's a figure standing to his right. He's got his hand on his right shoulder. This figure is wearing these kind of long black kind of robe-like garments, and they can see the back of the head. It's completely bald. They can't see its face because it's staring the same distance as they are towards the disc, so they can't see it. But it's a bit bigger than them, as you can see in the drawing. So he reckoned about sort of 5 foot, something like that. Obviously, he was quite young at the time. And it's just looking there. They couldn't really see any color to it because the color was drained out of the whole area because of the brightness coming from this disc. And it was just standing there, just staring alongside them. And then that's it. Bang, changes. They're no longer standing in their garden. Him and his brother are still standing there in exactly the same position they'd been a second ago, but now they're surrounded by this glowing pink energy, kind of like a neon pink sort of color in a kind of sphere all around them. And as they watch, the sphere begins to sort of break apart and sort of dissolve away. And as it dissolves away, they start to see patches of daylight through it, and it completely goes. And they've changed position. It's now daytime, and they're standing in a kind of side alley further down on the previous map, they actually had the two positions, so it's a few doors down, essentially quite close to the house where the disc was behind. There's this kind of side road, and they're down that. And there's a kid sitting on the ground next to them playing with a toy truck, and he's just looking up at them with a puzzled look on his face. Now, it's possible that he actually saw them materialize out of thin air. We don't know. But that there was also a lady who was leaning out of the windows of one of the nearby houses. And she said to them, "Are you the kids that have been gone all night?" That was what she said to them. So it seems likely that they'd had missing time. They'd been away the entire evening. Potentially the parents had come back from being away, obviously would have panicked, would have asked around the neighborhood, may have contacted the police. We don't know the full details about what took place there. But yeah, there's the alleyway. Okay, so this map on the left is the alleyway. The round circle is where they reappeared. There's a photograph of it on the right as talking about the boy and the woman shouting out the window. So at this point, he runs back to his house. So he kind of just starts running down this alleyway and off there towards the house. As he's running, he realizes that his memories were literally vanishing from the experience. He realizes he's forgetting what took place. And moments later, he doesn't remember it at all. So exactly like the Erdington experience, yeah, we've got total memory loss of the entire incident. And we assume that also the same thing happened to his brother. Now, what happened with that was in the months following, his father would ask him questions. They used to go out fishing together, and he'd sometimes bring up the UFO subject. And it was almost like he was trying to trigger memories of what had happened to him and get more information. He never said specifically that it was linked to this incident, but it's interesting that his father was mentioning that subject matter. They also moved away from the area, moved house. Now, he doesn't know for definite whether this was the case, but is a possibility there that they moved house because of what had happened, and maybe his parents were really spooked out by it. Unfortunately, his parents are no longer alive, so I can't speak with them. The cousin, she doesn't want to talk. She wasn't interested in getting in touch. He did try to contact her. So I'm going to take you forward now to a later experience that happened. So we now move forward to the mid-1990s. By this time, he's in his late 20s, and it took place at this place, Gare Loch, which is a Scottish loch northwest of the town of Rue. That's the edge of the loch there you can see on the picture. And there was a stately home, it's still there today, Blair Vadak it's called. And it's now being used as offices, but I don't think it was back in the 90s. It was a stately home that people could go and visit to have a look around. In the grounds of the house, they had these kind of open grassy fields, and they allowed a number of people to have caravans there. And at the time, his father owned a caravan that was a position A on there at the bottom of that field, located in the grounds of the house. Position B on the map is the house, of course, from the view. And position C is a kind of boating area where they sent out boats over the loch. And they used to go out fishing. So they used to go fishing on the loch in the day, and then they would return to the caravan, stop overnight in the caravan, and then make their way back to Brew and get trains or whatever back from their home. So on the day of the incident, they'd gone out fishing on the loch, and it got to about 5 o'clock, and there was kind of a light rain began. So started to, and they returned to the caravan. So they came back to the caravan, and these are some of the pictures of what took place. So they returned to this caravan. It's about 11 o'clock at night. They'd been there chatting, and they had a couple of drinks, not a massive amount. They had a couple of beers. I always ask sort of questions about that. If that's the case. I don't think it had anything to do with the incident, but it got to about 11 o'clock, and all of a sudden one of the friends, he spots something along the road moving their direction. This figure, you can see it there in the distance. That's how it looked when they initially saw it. Now they're looking there at the main end window of the caravan, and this is one of the side windows here you can see in that top picture. Now they can make out the top of this being, here's the weird thing, the hedge was about sort of 10 to 12 foot off the ground. So essentially it was too tall, much too tall. And in his head, he sees this and he thinks, his brain logically puts it down to a vehicle that had come up onto the pavement, and there's somebody leaning out of the top of the vehicle, sort of leaning out of a sunroof, and that's why it's up so high. That's what his brain thinks. But it's moving along the path like this, very, very just smoothly along towards them. And as it gets nearer, it hits him. It's the being. It's the same being that him and his brother saw back in 1971. It's wearing exactly the same clothing. They can now see its face. He didn't describe it as a grey. He hadn't really looked into the UFO subject too much, but he said that its face looked like a skull, essentially, with these dark holes for eyes. That's what he described it as. And it was moving along towards them, and he pointed it out to his friends, and his friends could see it clear as day coming towards them. They're obviously very spooked out by this. They're watching this figure just move along behind the hedge. It gets to the edge of the window, and they lose sight of it, and then they're starting to watch it through the side window like this. And as it moves past, that's the lower drawing there, as it moves past them, it just carries on gliding, but it slowly tips its head around like that to look straight at them. So it was aware of them, but really quite spooky, and they didn't know what was going on. And it carries on moving off to the left of the window, and they lose sight of it. So it kind of heads off. And as I say, he recognized it. It was going along. But that's not where it ended. So a moment later, there's these thudding sounds begin, and almost vibrations kind of running through the caravan. Now, they're obviously terrified about this strange being in the area looking at them, and they're like, what is going on? And they sense that the thudding and noises and things are coming from the other side of the caravan. The right-hand window was actually, the curtains happened to be drawn on it, and they realized that it was coming from behind there. And one of his friends they go up to the window and they pull back the curtains. And what they see is a sheep's face being pushed up against the glass. Now, this caravan, the height of the caravan, the sheep was in midair, basically. The sheep had been lifted up off the air, into midair, and was being pushed into the outside of the window. The thudding noises were its legs hitting the outside of the caravan, and it was also making these very distressed sounds. Now, obviously, this is quite terrifying, so he falls back away from the window, curtains kind of close shut. At that moment, it all stops. It's dead silence, nothing, no thudding, no vibrations, nothing. It all goes away. And this is really, really, obviously, extremely frightening for them. And one of his friends, Mick, he was deeply affected by the experience. He went and found some of that blue safety rope and grabbed hold of that, and then began to tie it around the caravan like a cobweb. And he was tying it around all the door handles, around the window handles, quite clearly quite traumatized by what was going on. Then went and sat underneath the kind of main table. You can see the edge of it there, and just sat there cross-legged, not saying anything. All three of them remained awake the entire night. They couldn't sleep at all. They sometimes just sat there in silence for periods of time. Other times they were discussing what had happened. They were all really spooked out by it and thought that maybe someone was going to come and get them in the caravan. You can imagine the situation, because they're out there in the middle of nowhere and all this strange stuff going on. It gets to about 6:30 and the early morning light comes up, and they decide they're going to leave the caravan at this point, and they've got to get out of the location. So they exit the caravan. There's no sign of any sheep alive or dead, and they essentially walk back to Brew and manage to finally get home. But yeah, quite a fascinating and somewhat terrifying experience there. It's very, very interesting aspects to it. It's interesting that it was the same figure that they'd seen before. It seemed to have no problem with showing itself to him and also a couple of his friends who weren't there in the first incident. It didn't seem to interact with them, although it's possible that they had missing time and other stuff took place that none of them can remember. That's entirely possible. His friend completely shut down, especially Mick shut down about the incident afterwards, and he tried to bring it up with him, and he wouldn't. He didn't want to discuss it at all because it had really, really traumatized him. So yeah, and as for the sheep, it's a possibility there was a craft in the vicinity and it was unintentionally being lifted up into the air, and that was what was going on with that, caught in some kind of field. Obviously, some people go down the idea of it being intentional, like it was trying to frighten them for some reason. We don't really know for sure. Obviously, there's links there with the animal mutilation phenomena, perhaps, but there was no kind of, the sheep wasn't there in the morning. But there was grassy fields around the area, so it could have potentially wandered through, but obviously that wouldn't have caused it to float up and get crushed into the edge of the window. So yeah, very interesting case. And he's had a lot more experiences besides that. That's just a couple of picked out there just to take you through. So another case now from Southampton. And again, this is a massive case involving lots of experiences, but some of those experiences involve the extraction of 2 possible implants and also injuries associated with them. So I'm going to take you through what happened with this. So the lady's name is Tina. She's an absolutely lovely lady. I've actually given joint lectures with her numerous times around the UK, but she lives in Southampton on the south coast. As I said, she had many experiences. So yeah, the first extraction of this object took place in 1999, and she was living with a second husband and on the place Birmingham Road. During the night, she had this dream. It was of this kind of greyish fog. She sensed something odd was going on with this. It was kind of very vivid. Now, she later on associated this fog with something she entitled the link. And what she means by that is a telepathic link with the grey beings that she would see in later experiences. And it would usually start with this kind of grey fogginess inside her mind that would sometimes be visual and sometimes just a kind of feeling in there. And she believed it was linked with the direct telepathic communication that was going on there. She woke up from this, so she didn't see any beings or anything like that. She just had this vision that had some link to her later experiences. In the morning, she immediately realised there was a stinging sensation on her right buttock, very, very powerful, very strong, like stronger than a wasp sting. Really, really nasty, strong sting. She felt down there, and she could feel this solid lump underneath the surface of her skin, and the pain was too great, and she needed to get it out essentially. So she asked her husband to cut into her skin and take out the object. So they didn't go to the doctors, they just did this at home. So her husband got some small sort of scissors and made a small incision because it was just literally just underneath the surface of the skin. And he pulls out this object. She's drawn it there. Sorry about the low quality of that image. But it was this small black rounded object. It was covered in this strange membrane. And they used the tweezers and they pulled away the membrane from this thing. And inside was what looked like a ball bearing. It was a silver spherical object, and it had been surrounded in this black membrane. She didn't remember having any sort of splinters or anything. Also, there was no surface damage, by the way, where they'd taken this out from. So we're holding it there in the tweezers, and they didn't really know what they had back then. She hadn't been looking into the contact subject or anything. So unfortunately, they threw it away, which is a shame. Of course, you know, it would have been nice if they managed to keep hold of that. We could have had a potential real implant to analyze. But they tried they tried cutting through this ball with the tweezers, and it actually snapped the tweezers. So it was rock solid and looked metallic. Yeah, but unfortunately they threw that away. So moving on to the second extraction that happened, we now move forward to 2014, and she'd gone round to her mother's house. She reaches her front door to open the latch, and straight away feels this sharp pain in the centre of her hand as she grabs the handle. Looking down there, she feels her hand, and there's a small lump in the middle of her below her middle finger. It's just another solid thing, and this again was causing pain. It wasn't as bad as last time, but it was still kind of there. And after a couple of days of this, without it kind of subsiding, she decided to go and visit her GP this time. He confirmed that there was an object. I think she told me it was X-rayed, but unfortunately she didn't have those X-ray images. He confirmed that there was this object and had recommended to get it extracted from her hand. So she booked into the hospital to go in to get this thing taken out. Now, when they extracted it, it looked almost identical to the previous thing that they'd taken out. Again, it was very small, had these kind of sort of webbings on either side. And yeah, the center of it was this kind of black ball. She only saw it, caught a glimpse of it as they took it away. She didn't say to them, "Oh, can I keep that?" or anything like that. Again, they just took it out and took it away for testing, put it in a little jar, and away it went. And she never saw it again since. So they may have it somewhere in a lab, who knows? But yeah, it was taken away. Perhaps it got thrown away again. But the surgeon, he did seem puzzled, and he acted like he'd never seen anything like it before. He didn't know what they'd pulled out of her hand, basically, but they took it away. From that operation, she had a bandage, a pressure bandage that she had to wear for a few days, just to kind of, in case there was any sort of movement would disturb the cut as it was healing up. But the following evening, she had this kind of aching sensation in her hand, obviously from where the operation had taken place. And during the night, she remembers seeing a bright white flash of light. That's it. Again, no detailed experience or anything, but there was this white flash. But in the morning, the pain had completely gone away. Looking down at her hand, there's no sign of anything. But at the top of the bandage, right up by her elbow, she spots this droplet of blood at the top of the bandage. And she pulls back the top of the bandage and is pretty shocked by what she sees. There appears to be two holes on either side of her arm, going into her arm, just clean holes, hardly any blood at all. The only blood there was the droplet that was on the bandage. And it's just going into her arm on both sides. So there's no pain with this at all. It's just very worrying indeed. So she goes back to her GP, and the GP, he confirmed to her that this hole was going through her arm. And he was asking her all sorts of questions about her nerve damage. And he was like, "What have you done to yourself? What have you fallen on?" And she said, "Nothing. I don't have any record." There was nothing in her house that she thinks she could have like impaled it on. And let's say you'd sleepwalked and you'd accidentally fallen on a long spiked object. I would certainly wake you up, wouldn't it? But she had no recollection of waking up in the night at all. Really, really bizarre. So obviously the doctor was extremely concerned by this and the lack of sensation, the lack of... So it healed up, but it left these two dark scars on her arm. That there is the actual scars of this. Now, I wanted to, it's a shame that we couldn't get medical records. She did have medical records linked with some of her other experiences, but did not keep any medical records with statements about this particular thing. But it was obvious from seeing them up close that it was kind of scars and not moles. And also, obviously, it kind of fitted in with her experience. And I trust that that took place as she described. Some of her other experiences did involve medical records. I'm not going to go over detail, but she had later on an operation internally on a sort of pelvic area. And they discovered lots of needle-like marks all over her pelvic bones, and told her that she must have had previous operations around her sort of womb area and everything. She basically said, "No, I've never been in a hospital at all." And we've actually got the written records confirming that, and you can read those inside the case report if you're interested there. So was this lump an implant? It seemed to link back to the previous incident, and that's the general look of how these things look. And there is a number of other cases where they've got this kind of membrane around the outside of them, kind of maybe cutting themselves off from the rest of the body systems. If this implant was taken out, was this hole that was through her arm, was that some kind of, was that linked in some way as a result of them taking out this implant from her hand? And it seems unlikely that they would do this to punish her, like, "Oh, you're taking out the implant, they're going to stab you through the arm." I've dealt with many cases involving implants over the years, and nobody else has reported anything like this before. But the fact that it happened a day after, while it was healing up after having this operation, seems to, unless it's coincidental, it could link those two experiences. So absolutely fascinating and very, very unusual. There's one more case I want to take you through today, and this is an amazing case that came from Dudley. And again, we go back to some of my earlier years as an investigator. Dudley's about sort of 45 minutes drive north of Birmingham. It took place in July 2010, and involved this lovely chap named Tom. I went around his house to go over discussions of what had happened. He had actually had a UFO sighting prior to this. It was a number of months before this. He saw a very strange looking UFO outside of his windows, broad daylight, and the thing reminded him of a jet engine. Like if you imagine a giant jet engine in the sky, silver colored, that's what he saw, and it essentially blinked into existence and then quickly vanished again. But a number of months later, this amazing experience took place. So he was lying in bed. It was about 12:30 in the morning. And at the time, they were actually getting the bed changed out. So it was a mattress, it was a double mattress just on the floor of the room. So he was right down near floor level. His partner, she dropped off to sleep alongside him. And he starts to see these strange shapes moving around his room, kind of wiggly black worm-like shapes, and he's following them with his eyes, watching as they're kind of moving around like this. Very odd. Sometimes you get kind of visual anomalies with experiences such as this. But after seeing these a while, he looks around to his right, and he's shocked to see that there's these three grey beings standing alongside his bed. And he doesn't know what they are. Again, he didn't have an interest at all in the UFO subject. But essentially there were these three beings, very tall craniums, black almond-shaped eyes, wearing these tight bodysuits, and they're just standing there in a row staring down at him. The nearest being reaches towards him with his hand, so it had 4 fingers, reaches out towards him with his hand. Obviously this spooks him out, and he rolls over, and as he looks back up above him, there's something else. There's this weird entity, had a kind of reptile-like, snout-like face, but almost looks like a spectre of some kind. And it was black and shadowy, and it came down towards him. It descended down towards his chest. And as it's coming down, he's trying to wake his girlfriend, just hitting his girlfriend in the arm, and she's not waking up. And I believe that she could have potentially been shut down while all this is going on, so she wasn't a witness and wasn't involved with the experience. So it comes down and it enters his chest. So he, as I say, at that point, when he tries to wake up his partner, he immediately blacks out. So he tries to wake her up, but nothing happens, and then bang, it's gone. Next thing he knows, it's the following morning, and he's just waking up like normal. But he could remember it. He could remember what had happened. And this is where things get really fascinating. So there's a few days after the experience, he suddenly feels the urge to write, grabs a pen, and he just sits there with a notepad, and he just grabs a piece of paper, and he just starts writing. And he's writing these strange symbols that he doesn't recognize at all. Now, they started off like a few symbols here and there, kind of sort of 6 or 7 symbols in a row, sort of little snippets of them, like random places around the page. But as it progressed, it became more and more structured until he was drawing entire lines, vertical lines of these symbols, as you can see. And we've got 22 pages of what is potentially genuine alien script there, an actual alien language. What we do know is it's not an Earth language at all. We've confirmed that. We've also confirmed that it is a language. It has repeated symbols, so it's not like he's randomly drawing random shapes. There's repeated symbols throughout this. And yeah, it's absolutely massive. On about page 23 of it, it stops about halfway across the page. I said to him, I said, why did you stop halfway across the page? And he said, that's the end of it. He said, that's the end of whatever this is. So it's commonly called an information download. There are a number of other cases like this where there's automatic writing involved. Sometimes the individual will just have the message straight away. Obviously, due to the length of this one, it had to be done in this way. He's not going to remember accurately 22 pages of script. But what it means, he has no idea. He hasn't even got an inkling of what this could mean. He just wrote it down in the days following his experience, and that's it. Now, I would love to get this properly analysed by a handwriting expert, but they're few and far between. And if they and those that are around are going to charge an absolutely massive amount of money. If there's anybody out there watching this who's a handwriting expert, by the way, and would like to get involved in this case and could analyse this further, you know, by all means, get in touch, because it is very, very interesting, and it does look like language. Now, it actually has linked to another contact case, believe it or not. I did look around to see, has anybody else drawn the same or similar type writing? And there's a number of cases where the writing's somewhat similar. The closest case we got is another contactee from the UK, a guy named Mike Oram. He's quite famous. He's actually released a book and has talked numerous times at conferences. Now, Tom had no idea who Mike Oram was or knew anything about it. And he's, as I say, he's not particularly interested in the subject. In actual fact, when I got in touch with him a number of years later, he didn't really want to know. I was trying to kind of ask whether anything else had taken place, and he just wanted to get on with his life. So even having experiences like this, they don't always change people. Sometimes people have a fascination from that point onwards. Sometimes they might be absolutely terrified of it and not want to go anywhere near the subject. And other times they're just like, okay, it happened, but they're just going to continue with their life. And that was one of these cases. But yeah, back to Mike Oram. So essentially, Mike, as part of his case, he had a number of these information downloads with these, not to the same sort of extent, but he had a number of scripts that he'd drawn down that he kind of loosely knew the subject matter of. Now, in looking through these scripts, we've actually got a 90% hit rate. So 90% of Mike's symbols exist in this script. Now, there's a lot more symbols as well that are in this script that Mike never drew, but probably because of the length of it. But I showed this script to Mike a number of years after, and he was absolutely impressed. He said that's the closest he's ever seen to it. And essentially, it looks like the same language. So it's a completely separate case there. But what it means, we don't know. But yeah, absolutely impressive. So that there's an overview of just a few of the cases that I've dealt with over the years. I hope you found it really, really fascinating. A few final thoughts to myself on this and what it all means. So the evidence obtained by my group, Birmingham UFO Group, over the years, I believe it points towards ongoing visitation and interaction with numerous species, most likely of extraterrestrial origin. That's my personal view. I don't try to push that on anybody. There's numerous views as to the origins of these beings, and nothing's set in stone with this subject. There's all sorts of different aspects to it, and it might be multiple things going on at once, but I think it's likely that at least some of them are from off planet. And it's fascinating cases such as these we've covered today that make the time and the effort that I put into my investigation work worthwhile. It's almost a duty of mine now, it feels, because there's so few people out there doing this, and it's such a fascinating subject. And once you realize that it's actually going on for real, it can't fail to be anything other than that, anything other than fascinating. And it's only through the braveness and honesty of witnesses coming forward in the first place that we can further our understanding and continue to unravel the amazing mystery of the UFO subject. If people were just keeping all these stories to themselves, we'd never hear any of this, and there'd be nothing to study at all. BUFOG will continue to share details of experiences with those that choose to listen, and will continue to provide an active community for those who've woken up to the reality of this subject. And yeah, our story at 14 years on has only just begun. So who knows what's coming around the corner. There's some details linked with my group. We've got the main website where you can find all the case reports of these cases and hundreds more that I've written over the years. It's inside the blog on the website, and it has search functionality. So if you want to look up a particular location or particular year, you'll be able to do that via that. We've got our Facebook group, which that's our official one there, the middle one, Birmingham UFO Group. On there, I will post new case reports that I release and details of our monthly meetings. And then we've got our community page, BUFOG Truth Seekers, which you're all welcome to join. It's got over 1.3 thousand members at the moment, and that's just where we chat about things between meetings, post articles and photos, videos, etc. So that's the end of my talk, The Best of BUFOG. I hope you've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. That was great. Very interesting.